Silver City was founded in 1870, and we have all kinds of records showing, who were the first people to discover silver in this community. But there's this whole folk tradition that before it was, founded by Americans, there was a small community here called San Vicente. It was actually called La Ciénega de San Vicente, and there's not a whole lot of documentation about that place. But most of the folk stories that we hear in this community and that we've collected from this oral history project point to Chihuahua Hill being the site of San Vicente. So a lot of people say Chihuahua Hill kind of predates Silver City. We don't know exactly when that started, but there are some sources that, say maybe 15 years before Silver City was officially founded, San Vicente was here, being used by primarily Mexican ranchers. The first use of the term Chihuahua Hill for the neighborhood was in the 1880s. It was in a newspaper. And since that time, the founding of Silver City, pretty much up until the late 20th century, it was primarily, Mexican-American neighborhood. If you look at a lot of the old census records, there's this whole kind of myth in a lot of local histories about the founding of Silver City, how it was founded on Anglo grit and ingenuity. And if you look at these old census records, you see that all the people putting in the labor that helped the town develop were Mexicans or Mexican Americans. So really they were a driver of the success of this community. And for the longest time they were just kind of in the background, at least in terms of history. They weren't really talked about. And if they were mentioned, it was always kind of in passing. Somewhere maybe the 1970s or so, a lot of the elders started passing away. A lot of the elders from these families who had been in the same neighborhood for generations. So when all of these elders started passing away and all of the younger generations started growing up, there was this kind of want to move away from the poor neighborhood, So there was, I guess you could call it like a Chicano flight away from the neighborhood. And more Chicanos moved to other parts of Silver City. And because of that, the neighborhood has changed quite a lot since then. Like I would say it's no longer the Chicano neighborhood in town. All kinds of different people live there. But the people who do live there, I think there is this, continues to be this fierce pride. And for the people who did live there in the past, I'm sure they're still proud of the neighborhood.
I was born and raised in Chihuahua Hill. Thinking back, we were a great big family. Anybody needed anything, if there was a tragedy, they all came together and helped each other. It wasn't like, ay, pobrecito, let's see what happens to them. No, they were all there. They took, they all came together to help. None of us felt that we were poor because everybody was at the same level. And even though our parents paid tuition, they scraped up the money somehow to pay the tuition. So again, that's the power of resilience and the community wanting to raise their family in a better way.
The reason it became the poor neighborhood in town was because there was so much of this segregation in educational opportunities and in occupational opportunities. It wasn't ever an official policy to put Mexican Americans in that position, but it's the way it happened. It was de facto rather than de jure.
First of all, we could not speak Spanish at school. We would get punished. At the high school level, it was hard going to the high school in the 60s. There was a lot of discrimination and everything, and you either rebelled and then ended up dropping out, or you kind of stayed quiet and in the background because that's how you were accepted.
One of the really, I think, best ones that exemplifies a community, the resilience of the community in the face of those things. Not one person that I talked to really called their experience suffering. To them, all of that stuff was kind of just the way things were, and they took whatever steps they had to do, building stronger community, becoming undeniable in the school systems, to kind of mitigate all of those things as best they could. Because I always come back to the question of what is history? History is more than just points on a timeline. It's more than just like event and year. It's the reactions to those events and how people feel about them and what that means for those communities and what that means for us now in the present. And if you're trying to understand history as something like that, then perspective is, the utmost important thing. The only way to get proper perspective on the past is to talk to people who lived through it, right? So I think because of that, oral history is probably one of the most important aspects of history.
And you learned a lot of your values through the oral history and the communication that you had with your family and even your brothers and sisters. I don't see them communicating too much, on a daily basis, what they're doing. We were always in touch with what our family was doing and who was doing what, cousins and everything. And so, the history and our values and how we could help each other was a real form of identity.
If everybody's going through the same thing, there's just this amazing sense of solidarity. And that's, one of the things that most of the elders have told me has changed most with the community. It doesn't feel like a community anymore. It just feels like a place where a bunch of different people live. Whereas before, entire families lived together and there was this whole network of friends and families that connected with each other. There was this one woman who told me this great story about, nobody ever went hungry because if one family had something, they would share it with the rest of the neighborhood, So I think there was this great sense of solidarity because of all the things that they had to overcome. Yes, even though this was an ethnic neighborhood and the history that we're showing is about this underrepresented group, if you peel all that away, it really is just a story about humanity. So I do think it really touched on one of those things that people are missing in their lives these days, that sense of larger community and being part of this human family.